Hello, and welcome back to Safe Space. This is the show that's dedicated to people of color in the LGBTQIA plus community. Every week, I try to bring to you a new and fascinating story with an amazing guest, and today is no different. Today's guest is a queer radio personality, host of an award-winning news podcast, and then also founder of E3 Radio and Qube. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anna DeShawn. Anna, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for accepting the invite. I'm so glad that you're on, and I'm so excited for you to share your story with all the guests today. So what I like to do is always kind of take it all the way back to when you were young and when you finally realized that you were a little bit different. And I hate using that word different, but when I say different, I just mean you felt not like everybody else. So I want you to be able to go back and tell your story. So start from the beginning.
In the beginning. I'm a girl from the south side of Chicago. That's my beginnings. I grew up with my parents, my sister, who is 17 years older than me. So she was another mom, a big family, huge family. My mom is from Mississippi. I've got family in the South. My dad family is in Chicago, and I'm truly a South Side kid. I grew up as a gym rat. My dad is a coach, educator. I grew up with him and playing sports my entire life, playing instruments my entire life, loving music, definitely working middle class family, and extremely blessed. I grew up in the church. I'm that Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday kid. I grew up Lutheran, but my father's family had a church on the South Side that was Missionary Baptist. So try to figure that out for yourself. Okay, that was my story. 2 Easter speeches kid here, 2 Christmas speeches here. That was my life. I had a wonderful childhood. I really could not have asked for anything more. And I always knew I was a little different because I was totally a town boy, like 150% hands down, feet to the ground. It's just who I was. And no one ever questioned it necessarily. And I think that, I think a girl's experience who is a town boy is so much different than a boy's experience who's effeminate. Our experiences are just night and day. And because I was athletic, I got a pass on so much. I played basketball. I was on the boys' basketball team in grammar school. There was one of 2 girls that was on the team, and we were really good. I mean, that was a mood. I went to high school where my dad was the principal. Don't need to do that again, but it was a time, and and that's where I went to high school. My aunt was the secretary. My cousins went to school with me. I mean, my dad's basically a pastor. My mom was everything. Business manager for the Chicago Children's Choir. She was always giving back, always taking care of people. And so both my parents are people who have been of service to their communities, to their church. And that is my DNA. That is my DNA. That's my foundation. And I always knew I was just like a little bit different. I just had a little bit of a different angle than all the girls that I knew. I just never had the same interests. I didn't come out until college, though. I didn't know what life would look like if I did come out, just because my family was so religious. And to my surprise, they accepted me with open arms. My dad, first thing he said was, "You ain't found the right guy yet," which was funny.
Wait, hold on 1 second. I don't want to go too far yet. I want to kind of step back just a little bit. You have a fascinating and very rooted background. Like you said, your parents are, belong to the church and steep into community. And I think that's really instilled in you. And we'll get into that, how it's translated into your adult life.
Mm-hmm.
But, you said that you realized that you felt different at an early age. Like, what age did you realize that, you didn't fit in with all the other girls and what the stereotypical girls were?
I mean, really young. I can't pinpoint a number necessarily, but I drove my mom crazy. I mean, I know I drove her crazy because she had me as like totally a girly girl. I mean, I was the kid with the dress with the ruffle socks, okay? And then I had, if my dress was green, my bows and my hair were green, okay? I had barrettes for everything and um Easter hats. I mean, my mom, I mean, I was that girl, okay? And when I got old enough to speak my mind about it, she knew very early that is not what I wanted to wear. And that's
Yeah.
the clothes were the first thing that I can recall really pushing back on when it came to my mom. And it got to the point where she just stopped, she just gave up shopping with me. And it became my dad's job to take me shopping. Especially when it came to big occasions like Easter outfits and stuff like that. Because my mom, she loved to shop, and I'm sure she wanted a daughter that would shop with her. And I was just not that kid. I hated it. I still hate shopping to this day. And um I can't pinpoint an age, but it was definitely my clothes and how I wanted to present myself, which was the first thing that really stood out. Like, maybe I know I'm different because my cousin over here, she loves it. She would love to go shopping with my mom. She loved dressing my dolls and those
Mm.
dolls and doing their hair, and they would look the exact same every time she came back. Whatever she left it as, that's how them dolls looked when she got back. And it was just never who I was. It just never was who I was from a very, very early age.
Okay, so as you said, you got older and you came out in high school, you said, correct?
No, I did not come out in high school. I came out in undergrad.
Okay, undergrad.
Yeah.
Talk about that experience and how that transpired and the relationship that you had with your mother and your father, because it seemed like you guys were a very tight-knit family. You had a very
Mhm.
strong upbringing. So what was that like?
Anxiety filled, scary, a lot. I mean, in undergrad, I definitely built a chosen family where if all went wrong, they was like, we got you. Like that was something I was actively doing because I just really didn't know how it was gonna go. I really did not. So when I went home to come out, um, I'm almost certain I told my sister first, and she was like, oh, "Okay," and then she started putting some pieces together. Because at the time, my girlfriend at the time would come home with me for the holidays. And so she was like, "Is that your girlfriend?" I was like, "Yeah," and she's like, now that makes sense. And so she started putting the pieces together pretty quickly. Um, I don't know if I told my mom or my dad first, but my mom and I had a wonderful conversation. We both cried, and she told me that she always knew. She just never thought I was going to say anything. Um,
Mm.
and then my dad told me that I just hadn't met the right guy yet. I'm pretty certain I came out to my dad probably another 3 or 4 times. He needed that, but he's cool now. But I think he was feeling, I think my dad felt lots of things. I think maybe there was pieces of him that maybe felt some guilt. Thinking maybe he had something to do with it because I was just always in the gym, always a gym rat, always into sports. I mean, he literally would take me to the Mister shop where he got his custom suits and I got my custom suit. And I mean, this is just what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so I think he needed support probably from some of his friends who were also very supportive and probably family members who were also supportive to show them that it's all good. You're good. She's good. We're fine. I think maybe he needed that.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you said that your mom basically was waiting for you to tell her, because I think a lot of times, not necessarily both the parents, but I think moms tend to have like this that intuition. They birthed you. They know who you are inside and out before you even know yourself. So, what's the relationship with your mother today? And then also, now that your father, as you said, you had to come out to him 3 times before I think it really absorbed in. What's that relationship like?
Yeah, so today my mom has dementia, which is a whole
Oh.
nother journey with her today. It's so interesting. The brain is just a very interesting thing. But mom has a lot of love and she asks about Kaya, who's my wife, all the time. And I can't leave the house without her asking, how's Kaya doing? Now, does she remember going to our wedding? No.
Yeah,
That's not a memory that she holds anymore. Does she remember who Kaya is in essence? Yes. And so that still warms my heart. My dad, he's great, right? He ended up walking me down the aisle, right, for our wedding. He's really supportive. Um, and And I don't know how he's reconciled it all, to be honest. I think for him, it is just loving me, and that's enough. But I will say, I host a huge gala every year at one of the biggest gay bars here in Chicago, and he is there every year, and everybody loves to see him. And he enjoys all the drag performers, and the drag performers enjoy him, and he has a wonderful time. And I'm sure his friends, and I'm sure he never thought, 30 years ago that would ever be his truth. That would be
yeah.
anything that he would ever do. But he does it every single year. So, and it's a fun time and everybody loves my family. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Let me tell you something. The one thing I know, parents love us and they're going to show up for us. Now, I want to step back just a little bit. Talk about your experience of how you navigated from, undergrad until the moment you met your wife, and then we'll get into that relationship a little bit later. But I really want to just kind of dive in, and see how you start to navigate and move in the world as you're coming into your own adulthood, and now acknowledging this is who I am and this is how I'm going to show up in the world.
Yeah, a lot happened in between college and meeting my wife. I think some of the most significant moments were me Googling Black lesbian Chicago and finding Affinity Community Services, a nonprofit serving at that time Black, lesbian, and bisexual women, and finding that community. That was a huge moment in my life. It was at that point that I realized that there are other people like me in real life who are successful, who are thriving, who have families, right? Who have good jobs, who are okay. And every year they host an event called Burning Bowl, where 200, 300 Black lesbians and queers gather, okay? Queer women gather. And I can still remember the first time that I went to that event and the feeling I had of being overwhelmed and in awe that this too is possible for me. And so I became very involved in Affinity, leading groups, volunteering. I eventually sat on the board, became board president over many years. And it just became a very important part of my life, and where I began to learn about Black lesbians and queer women who had come before me, right? And sort of some of the history of Chicago and the work that they did. And that too was important to me, um, because it told me that there were people who fought for my existence before I knew who I even was, right? And for me, that's powerful because I believe history helps to inform our everyday life. And if
Absolutely.
you know, and
Not
if
enough people actually believe that, and I think
mm.
that's where our downfall as a community is.
History absolutely informs what is happening today. And if we don't know it, it will repeat itself. And that's what we are experiencing today. We are
Yes,
experiencing a repeat of history, and I'm living in it. We are living in it. And we must be present about that because it's absolutely happening. And so that was like probably the one of the biggest moments in between that time period for me that really helped to shape who I am today for sure. Um, from undergrad, I went and got my master's in communications, ended up coming back home, being in another long-term relationship, finding my footing in corporate America, whatever that means, and spending next 12 years at a tech startup doing online broadcasting and really being excellent, but always being pulled to do my own work, always being pulled to tell stories that I wanted to tell, which were stories about Black folks and queer folks, and reporting about what was going on in our communities because I just never felt like it was being done, and and that's the work that I wanted to do, So yeah.
yeah. That's amazing. That's awesome. And I'm so glad that you're able to live in your truth and then also just excel at everything you've done in your career. And, how did you meet your wife? Because I want to transition to that,
Mm.
because I think people want to hear that story. I love a good love story, and I love when I come across people that are able to find love and just live freely.
And I will say this too, Chris, is that it is absolute privilege that I get to live my dream every day. Because people often don't have that option. So I always like to acknowledge that, because the risk that I took to do the work that I'm doing is not a risk that everybody can take. So
Yeah.
I always just want to acknowledge that. But child, to the love story. So I got asked to model in a calendar. And that was very odd. I don't think before then I had done any modeling or gotten in front of a camera. I think she was the first person to ever take a professional like photo of me. And it was for a calendar that featured androgynous models, and the money went to breast cancer research, which was right up my alley because my mom is a breast cancer survivor. And
Okay.
so I was like, okay, cool, I can do this model thing, whatever. It was so terribly uncomfortable. And so the calendar release party came around, and my wife ended up being there with one of my friends, and she was their guest. And we ended up talking a little bit, but she thought I was there with somebody else. I was not. I was not there with somebody else, but she thought I was. And so we chopped it up a little bit. And then after the calendar release party, I hit up my friend. I was like, I think your friend cute. What's her name? And so we exchanged. That's how we got connected. And then we went out on some dates, and we've been, goodness. I think the other day she told me it's been 12 years. I think I stopped counting after 10. We've been married for 7.
Oh, well,
Uh,
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, that's the abbreviated version, but um I was dating for a long time, coming out of a long-term relationship, and dating was fun for me. Okay. And so let me tell you, I almost lost her for sure in a moment, because bachelor life was good. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But
Okay.
there was nobody like her, and she just fit. I think people say, "Oh, you'll just know." There's some truth to that. It's so cliche, but there is some truth to it. I think in my experience, it feels like she's always been here. It feels like she
Can
was
I
always around. Like,
can I just comment on that? You said
yeah.
something that my husband says all the time when we tell our stories. He said it just felt like you were always here. Like there was never a space where you weren't there, and it's so true. It's cliche, but it's so true. When you know, you know. I
Yeah.
people that watch this show and know me on social media, I've told the story umpteen times, but when I met him, I knew almost instantaneously. Like within that
Mhm.
first week, I was like, "Yep, we're gonna get married." Not that I thought that marriage was ever anything that I would really want in my life, but I
Mm.
instantly knew, like, "Oh my God, this is the person I'm supposed to be with," and
Wow.
you just know. So I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's so surreal, but it's so true. So true.
Yeah. So you guys have been together for 12 years, married for 10. What's life been like for you guys?
Married for 7,
Oh,
but
married for 7, sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine. Life is good. I mean, life is good. We've moved a few times um over the years, and just grown, right? So she moved into my bachelor pad and turned it into her closet, because my wife is a diva. Um and, and and this is how she gets us to move to other places, is that she just fills her stuff up everywhere. Because she knows how to get to my Virgo spirit of this is too much for me. And so we ended up buying our first home right before COVID, and going through that whole life of COVID life together here in the house. And I don't know. I have no complaints about life. And she supports my work. She supported me taking this big risk, which um, I feel incredibly blessed by, because when you go from having, a steady paycheck every 2 weeks to deciding you're about to take a big leap and follow what you feel like you've been called to do
Your
in your life,
passion.
your passion, right? This don't guarantee me no income. I have to go
Absolutely.
get my income,
Yeah.
and, that takes a lot, and so I'm really, grateful for her love and support, because it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy.
No. I get it. We're in the same boat. Trust me. I
Yeah.
left corporate America to do what I'm doing now. I have my own small business, but it takes the dedication on your part, but also it takes dedication and commitment and support from the your partner to be able to do this. This is actually a great segue because I want to talk about those businesses and how you're thriving in what you're doing now. So you're the founder of two companies, E3 Radio and the Qube. Talk about how those things came about because not only are they businesses, but this is your way, in a way, your way of giving back to the community as well. So talk about how they came about and what it is that you do with them.
100%. So E3 Radio was actually born out of undergrad. I ran for Student Activities Board president at Drake University. That's where I did my undergrad time. And I ran on a platform to educate, enlighten, and empower the student body. Okay. And I got so far to be in a runoff, I almost won. And that's pretty good considering I'm not Greek and I was at a predominantly white institution. But in undergrad is when I started to learn about Black women that I had never learned about before. And that concerned me. That troubled me so much in my spirit because I was like, it took me having to go to this institution to learn about these women and how many people don't get that opportunity. So the first thing I wanted to do was create PSAs and syndicate them to college radio networks and stations to share information about an Ella Baker or a Fannie Lou Hammer or an Angela Davis. I could go on all day, a Shirley Chisholm. And so that's where E3 Radio was born. I swapped out Empower for Entertain, and it became E3 Radio. Every project in school that you needed to have a business, it was always E3 Radio. And in 2009, November of 2009, I had my first show. It was on Blog Talk Radio, and it was with an organization called Gender Just, which doesn't even exist anymore, which says a lot about how long I've been doing this. And so that's how we started. I started taking on other shows, having other hosts on the radio station, and it just sort of became its own thing, and it just kept growing. And I just felt like there was always a need. When I first started though, I wasn't convinced that it was going to be queer. I mean, I cared about Black issues just as
Mhm.
much. I cared about women's issues just as much. And it was very evident after a while that everybody I was having on was also queer. Like everything was just at the intersections of that thing. And I had a conversation with a sister who does PR here in the city, and she was like, "Anna, your station should just be a queer radio station." And I pushed back on her so hard on that. And we talked about that recently. And she's like, I remember. Because the first logo didn't even have the rainbow in it. It was purple and white. And it was after I decided that it should be focusing on queer stories that I put the rainbow inside the radio tower. So today, the radio station plays queer music 24 hours a day from our website, e3radio.fm. And we host a queer news podcast that I host and produce, where we share news at the intersections of race and sexuality as it pertains to politics, entertainment, and culture. And it brings me a lot of joy. And so that's what the radio station is. And then when I quit corporate 3 years ago, I was like, we have to remain relevant in this space. And to do that, we got to get into the podcasting game. Like podcasting just never went away. We always had an RSS feed because we were online, Blog Talk Radio, etc. But it was whatever we were doing live is what ended up on that feed. But to be intentional about podcasting and what it means to continue to connect with our community, because everybody wanted things when they wanted it. Like there was a drastic shift on how we take media in from 10 years ago to how we take it in today. I mean, DVR
Yeah.
changed the game, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, we got to get into the podcasting space. And so that's where the Qube was born, because we couldn't find Black podcasts that we wanted to listen to. We couldn't find queer podcasts we wanted to listen to. And so if you can't find it, you got to build it yourself. Right. And so that's what we decided to do. And that's how the Qube was born. So e to the power of 3 is to cube something mathematically. And it came to me in the shower to just put a Q on it and make it the Qube. And so that's how the Qube was born.
Can I tell you something? You're speaking to my spirit right now. I'm going to tell you why. A lot of things you're saying are things that either I've experienced or what I've done. Like a lot of my really good ideas or a lot of things that I do have come to me while I'm in the shower. And I think part of that is because for me, like bathing is like a ritual where you can kind of go in and you let the world just kind of wash away. I don't think of anything. I'm not trying to think of, oh, what I got to do next. I just kind of, my mind is kind of free. So when my mind is free, a lot of those ideas and thoughts can just kind of flow in. And that's where they come from. So it's just kind of funny that you said that because I can definitely relate to it.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So with the Qube, like what type of podcast? I understand that it's a queer podcast, but like who are the type of guests that you have on? How many days a week do you do it, or is it once a week? You know, that type of stuff.
For sure. So let me start with Queer News. So Queer
Okay.
News is our award-winning podcast, and it absolutely brings me joy to do this podcast because mainstream LGBTQ media is very white. It just is what it is. And there's not a lot of conversations at the intersections. And when it is, it's always tragic news. And I'm just like, we are more than that. So Queer News brings me a lot of joy because I get to tell the stories that I want to tell that I feel like folks are not hearing. And so we drop that podcast every Monday by 7 a.m. And it's usually 4 to 5 queer news stories. And I keep it pretty short. It's usually 20 minutes or less. It gets a little bit longer if I got a lot to say about something, but usually 20 minutes or less. So I want people to be able to take it in on their ride to work, on their ride back home, on a
Yeah.
workout, and it's just my voice. So you can also only take that for so long. The longer episodes are the interviews, and I love interviewing people in the community, the Lena Waifs of the world, the Imani Rupert Gordons, the Samsons. I've interviewed lots of folks on the podcast, and it does bring me a lot of joy for that. So that's the Queer News podcast. When it comes to the Qube, people have called it like the Black Spotify, the Black Queer Spotify, whatever resonates with you. But I want it to be a place where people can go find the best Black and Brown podcasts. So today we have 60 podcasts in our network on our platform. We have also created our own Qube original podcast that tells the stories at the intersections of race and sexuality. So I'm looking to build this platform that does not exist out here in the world. You're not going to find these podcasts on Apple or Spotify because they weren't built for this. They were built to house things. They weren't built to help you find things that were meant for you. And so with the Qube, that is what we're looking to do, is to create that platform that centers Black and Brown stories.
Okay, so the Qube is really an app that you can go out now. Is it on both Google Play Store and Apple Play Store?
Not yet. So I am actively looking for investment to build out the actual application. Today, you can find it on our website, theqube.app, THEQUBE.app, and you can begin discovering today all this content I know you can't find nowhere else. You just can't find it.
No, I hear you because it's so hard to find really good podcasts, and especially podcasts that really talk about and are from people that look like us.
Yes.
And that's the reason why I do this show. I really wanted a show that was dedicated to people of color because it's so hard to find. A lot of times people of color don't get the acknowledgement and that status to be able to put this stuff out there for other people to consume. It's typically your Caucasian counterparts that they don't have to work for it. They say they want to do it, they do it, and it's up there and out there to the world. So I hope that by us creating our own spaces and putting it out that will allow people to see themselves, to see that there's someone else that looks like you, that's been through the same things that you have, and just find community. Speaking of community, and I want to give you your flowers right now because I know you were just recently awarded the Equity Illinois 2024 Community Pride Award. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah. Talk about that experience.
It was wonderful, right? So Equality Illinois is our civil rights LGBTQ organization, and they exist across the country. If you're in a large state, I'm sure there's an equality near you. Okay, there's an equality Florida, there's an equality everything. Okay, and so they fight on our behalf as it pertains to civil rights, politics, culture. And so I really appreciate the work that they do here in Illinois. We're one of the most protected states for LGBTQ folks, period. We could always be better, but we're really protected here. And it's because of the hard work that they've put in. So to be recognized by them as this community awardee, it meant a whole lot. It meant a whole lot. And I'm still taking it in, and I'm just really grateful. So appreciate that, Chris. Yeah, that
They
happened.
they see you, and they see all the work, the hard work that you've been putting in and putting out into the world. Because let me tell you something, when you put out good stuff into the world, it comes back to you tenfold. So
Mhm.
congratulations on that. And I just love it when people are recognized for what they're doing while they're still alive. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I gave you your flowers. All
Thank you.
right.
Thank
Um, oh, appreciate it. So listen, when this actually airs, it will be probably about a month after Capitol Pride. And I know that you were
you.
there recently. Talk about the experience of being at Capitol Pride.
Big ups to the Capital Pride team. Okay. As a media owner, we survive on advertising. Okay. Like, let's be very frank about that. And I am constantly out here pitching myself and selling the work that we're doing. And how can I continue to tell the story that people need to be supporting the media that you want to take in, that you want to ingest, that you want to see in the world? It doesn't just happen. Like, right? You doing good over there, Chris. I'm doing good over here. And it comes with receipts. I don't care how good it is. It also comes with
Yeah.
receipts. Okay. And somebody has to get paid. And so
Yes.
I'm constantly pitching myself out here in the world. And it's incredibly exhausting, and it is vulnerable. Okay. And you put yourself out here every single day. And that's how I know everybody is not built for this, because everybody can't take this. The amount of
Yeah.
rejection you get. Yes, there are awards, and you need those to keep you going. Okay. Because let me tell you, the no's are far longer than the yeses. And
Yeah.
so I've got a wonderful team member in this work, Nicole Walker of Win Hers United, who's been helping with our sponsorship and advertising work. And they reached out to Capital Pride about Queer News Podcast and the work we're doing to get the word out, and wanted to know if they want to do some advertising or some partnership. Well, it turned out we had multiple conversations, and we ended up with a wonderful partnership with Capital Pride. And they brought in all of these content creators from across the country as they prepare for World Pride 2025 that's happening in
Right.
DC, right?
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is wonderful. I mean, we got the podcast right here. Let's do it. And we ended up with a wonderful partnership. They brought us in. My wife and I went. We got to network with so many content creators from across the country to help tell the story of Capital Pride. We got to ride on their float for the parade. That was so much fun. We had a booth at the festival to help spread the word about the work, and also meet people who were familiar with the work, which always warms my heart and takes me aback, because I literally sit in this room that I'm talking to you in right now, Chris, and you know this very well, and you talk to yourself. Okay, I'm sitting
Yeah.
literally like, right, doing this podcast. I am talking to myself. I see the numbers. I know people are listening, but you don't always have an opportunity to meet them. And so
Yeah.
to be there and to interact with folks who are familiar with the work, and who want to support it, it was just a really good time. We really had a wonderful time, and I'm looking forward to going back next year.
Yeah, it has to be rewarding and encouraging to have people acknowledge that, oh, I listen to your stuff, and it gives me encouragement, and they're looking forward to it. And then also to be acknowledged by Capital Pride and to be invited back for World Pride. So for those that do not know, DC will be the heart for the world next year when it comes to Pride Month. It's not just going to be local; it's going to be global. And unfortunately, I was actually there in DC this past weekend, and I mentioned that to you. I wasn't able to attend anything because I was actually working, because the work never stops, and when the work calls, you gotta go. So but I'm definitely going to make sure that I have World Pride blocked out on my calendar next year, and hopefully make sure I'm not working so I can actually go and enjoy the events there. But yeah,
100%.
so
They're estimating like 3 million people to descend
wow,
upon DC for
wow.
World Pride. It's going to be quite the moment to take in. That's for sure.
Well, that's awesome. So listen, before we start wrapping this up, one question I always like to ask people is like, where do you see yourself in a few years doing what you're doing?
Hmm. That's a great question. My hope is that in a few years, we have the proper investment for the Qube, that we have an app that's up and running with thousands of active users who are enjoying the hundreds of pieces of curated podcast content that we're serving up to them. I I hope that that is the case in a few years. I hope that we have broken a mold that does not exist in the podcasting space and created space for BIPOC creators to be seen and heard and amplified. My hope for the Queer News podcast is that we're one of the top 10 queer podcasts out here in the world, telling stories that deserve to be heard. And tens of thousands of people are listening week over week and taking in the news and feeling more informed and feeling more empowered to be active in their communities and feel like they can be part of the change, right? That we want to see, which is full equity, full inclusion, liberation, right? For for us. So in a few years, I hope that's the story. I hope that is the story.
Well, listen, I believe in putting it out into the universe and in letting it come back. And I think it's going to happen for you because you're so determined, you're strong willed. And I mean, look at what you've already accomplished in this short life of yours. The world is your oyster and the sky is the limit. There was one other thing I just want to kind of touch on, like your social media, because I see that you do a lot of posts and, it seems like it's a lot of fun. You do have like stuff work related and then some stuff that's kind of like personal. How do you use social media to kind of help just push everything that you're doing?
I use each platform differently because my audiences are different in each of those platforms. And so it didn't start off that way, but definitely as time has moved and these platforms continue to change, I definitely use each one differently. So Facebook are like my old school people. They've known me since I started this thing in November 2009. Okay, that is the tribe on
Ride or
Facebook.
die, ride or
You
die.
know what I mean? So that's what's on that platform. Instagram are new folks because my old IG was hacked, and so my new Instagram, I'm trying to share more personal things so it doesn't just feel like work things. So folks can get to know who I am, because what I understand is that the brands are great, but people want to follow the human being. They
Yeah.
connect with people. People connect with people. Um, and so I'm lurking to do a better job of sharing more of myself on Instagram and sharing more of my thoughts, um, and being okay with what my opinion is and saying it out loud, which is a very vulnerable thing today. Social media is a wild place. Um, but being able to stand 2 feet down on what I actually believe. And so Instagram is that place for me. TikTok is fun. TikTok is fun. TikTok is where I started sharing queer news. It's where I have found the most interaction, the most growth. I have a ball on TikTok. Um, so go ahead and follow me there. And then LinkedIn is professional. LinkedIn are all
Yeah.
my professional people I've met over the years, and they love the updates and they love the podcast. And so I wish I spent more time on LinkedIn, but I find LinkedIn as a place, and their algorithm is wild. I freaking love LinkedIn's algorithm. Something can live on LinkedIn for months. So I find, sharing the wins, sharing the struggles, especially when it comes to startup life and tech with the Qube. It has been a wonderful place for community, a wonderful place to find support for the work
Mhm.
that I'm doing, and to keep people updated. So I use each platform differently, a little different. You can find some crossover content, but some stuff is just on those platforms, period.
Awesome. All right. And the last thing, what words of wisdom can you leave our guests that are watching today?
Words of wisdom. So if I was to leave with words of wisdom, I always think about quotes. And probably one of my favorite quotes that I use quite often is Shirley Chisholm, because I just think she was such a badass. And one of her quotes says, "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." And I think she brought her folding chair to all those tables that they did not want her. Okay. And she did that so that we could build our own tables. I truly believe that. And we are in a time where we absolutely have the tools at our fingertips to build our own tables. And so I challenge anyone listening or watching this to figure out what your passion is and build a table where you can invite those who want to dine with you, who want to hear what you got to say, who want to support your work, right? Who you can be of service to. So I say, go out here and start building some tables.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a pleasure, and I hope that people walk away learning something about you and life in itself. Thank you for joining me, and thank you guys for joining me again, as you do every week. So, as I say to you guys every week, take care of yourself, take care of others, and maintain a safe space. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching this show on Indie Media. Now, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification button so that you can get notified when we drop new videos every week. See you guys next time.